Hi, I'm Liz Cheney. Over the last several years, citizens across our great state have urged me to consider running for the Senate in 2014.
That, of course, was Liz Cheney, ever the people pleaser, announcing by way of YouTube yesterday she will bow to the great pressure from the good people of Wyoming and run for U.S. Senate next year. But here's the thing. There is not an open U.S. Senate seat in Wyoming next year. The seat she's currently running for is occupied by someone from her own party, Republican Mike Enzi, who's serving his third term and who, it just so happens, announced his own intentions to run for another term just yesterday.
It's kind of interesting that about 30 minutes after I put out a release saying that I intend to run, that she put out one saying that she was running. She said that if I ran, she wasn't going to run, but obviously that wasn't correct.
Did she call you, sir?
No, she didn't. Well, she called me a long time ago and said she was considering it.
What's your relationship with her?
I thought we were friends.
Now, there are a few things we should all keep in mind about this new development in Wyoming politics. Besides the fact that Liz Cheney is apparently a really crappy friend, Liz Cheney is truly one of the most odious presences in American politics today. Liz Cheney, for example, is responsible for the shameless far-right pressure group that cast Justice Department lawyers who were called upon to represent Guantanamo prisoners as al-Qaeda sympathizers. The same group that helped lead the charge against a Muslim community center in Lower Manhattan, cleverly, if completely inaccurately, nicknamed by the far right as the Ground Zero Mosque. Just a few months ago, she all but accused the president of being an anti-American agent, writing, quote, "The president has so effectively diminished American strength abroad, there's no longer a question of whether this was his intent." Last year, she went even further, suggesting that by supporting defense cuts, the president was basically working for the Taliban.
What President Obama is doing is something that America's enemies, the Taliban, al-Qaeda, have been unable to do, which is to decimate the fighting capability of this nation.
And if you ask Liz Cheney what with all this pro-al-Qaeda Taliban sympathizing, you can't really blame the fringe crazies for thinking President Obama must be a secret Kenyan Muslim terrorist plant. Here's how she explained the all-American phenomenon of birthers back in 2009.
People are uncomfortable with having, for the first time ever, I think, a president who seems so reluctant to defend the nation overseas.
Liz Cheney does not just argue her point of view. She boils up a stew of the most repugnant, factless, fear-mongering propaganda to rile up the darkest forces of the far political fringe. As an added bonus, she's in the global warming is fake because of snow caucus as well. Now, whatever you think about her father, you got to allow Dick Cheney this. He came about his infamy honestly. He is a real up-by-the-bootstraps kind of villain. But Liz Cheney is the knockoff version. She's a legacy case, a toxic example of what affirmative action for overprivileged white people looks like. She bought a house in Wyoming last year, and as far as anyone can tell, the justification for her campaign is that she would very much like to be a U.S. Senator. Thank you very much. And presumably, her dad will be helping her raise money with his fabulously wealthy and powerful friends. To be perfectly honest, there is no real reason to care about this race. On its face, a race that will probably be decided by fewer people than simultaneously did the Gangnam-style horse dance with Psy in Seoul last fall. But here's what's fascinating about it anyway. Liz Cheney's candidacy represents a return to the 200-proof neoconism into the Republican Party. She'll be spending the next year playing to a conservative base that has gone increasingly anti-interventionist, a la Rand Paul, in terms of foreign policy. So what's about to unfold in Wyoming is a captivating test case as to whether the Republican base can beat back the neocon aristocracy. Joining me now is Matt Welch, editor-in-chief of the libertarian magazine Reason, co-author of the book The Declaration of Independence, How Libertarian Politics Can Fix What's Wrong with America. Well, Liz Cheney is what's wrong with America, and I'm hoping that the Wyoming libertarian streak is going to beat her back, because I genuinely think that one of the most fascinating elements of center-right politics is that the base is nowhere near as interventionist as the oligarchy that runs foreign policy. And here we've got a perfect test case.
Yes, and this is particularly true in Montana and Wyoming, kind of big sky country, the Rocky Mountain sort of area. We've had in American politics the last 3 years a very interesting thing happening in the Republican Party, which is that there's been a series of primary fights going on. It's not happening in the Democratic Party right now. Almost all of them since about May 2010 have been in one direction. It's the Club for Growth, Freedom Works, Tea Party types, the Rand Pauls, the Marco Rubios, going against the establishment as represented by Dick Cheney, Mitch McConnell, and other people. And they've been winning systematically. They have not, the other side has not been initiating these fights. This is the first time, at least in my knowledge, where we have the establishment initiating the fights. The question is why.
Okay, so why is it? Yeah, and what I see, I thought it was interesting. She's talking about defense cuts there. There's been a whole bunch of high-profile clashes between particularly Rand Paul and John McCain and Lindsey Graham, which kind of represents this split in the Republican Party around foreign policy, about arming Syrian rebels, about the defense sequester, about drones, right? We've seen these clashes. This seems to me an intervention on the side of the McCain-Graham arm of the party.
Think about, we like to call it the angry bird versus the wacko bird split, right? And John McCain and Lindsey Graham don't have juice anymore. When Lindsey Graham goes out and says, well, I think we should boycott the Olympics in Russia, people are just rolling their eyes at him at this point. There isn't a really good spokesman for that part of the party anymore. John McCain, although he still has a lot of influence, he just doesn't have a lot of juice. If you went to the Republican convention in 2012, all of the sort of buzz was around these insurgent types, and these insurgent types are much less interventionist. And so this is the first case. They want to have a 46-year-old who has a little bit of a spring in her step and some name recognition to be able to get on the SATS floor and make these fights.
And what's interesting here is that this is a proxy war that has literally nothing to do with Mike Enzi. I mean, Mike Enzi is completely just in the wrong place. Not that I care one way or the other about Mike Enzi. And in fact, I think primary fights are good. People should have contested elections. People shouldn't run unopposed.
Democrats should do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Everyone, go run for office. But here's Rand Paul kind of firing back the first shot on this. He says, when I heard Liz Cheney was running for Senate, I wondered if she was running in her home state of Virginia.
Oh, man.
Which makes me think that he understands precisely what this is about, right? Yeah. This is a proxy war against his people.
We've been talking to some people off the record about all this and saying, what is this about? And their indications are it is precisely this. There needs to be some spokesman on the Senate floor or in American politics in general who are ready to fight off the Rand Paul wing of the party. Think about it. Rand Paul has already co-opted Mitch McConnell. Right? Mitch McConnell, who brought in Dick Cheney, who brought in all these neocons to try to fight off Rand Paul in May 2010, has hired Rand Paul's political team to run his reelection in Kentucky, and he's basically doing Rand Paul's bidding. So they need other horses.
So here's the fascinating thing. So the way that the question of Liz Cheney is, how do you win a race where you represent the establishment? How do you get the grassroots that hates the establishment on your side? I think the answer is, I'm going to out-Obama hate anyone, right? Yes. That's the card she's going to play. Here she is making her case for how she's going to run this race.
Instead of cutting deals with the president's liberal allies, we should be opposing them every step of the way. I'm running because I believe it is necessary for a new generation of leaders to step up to the plate.
Right? Like, no cutting deals. Mike Enzi's cutting deals. Of course, she would cut deals on everything from surveillance to drones to arming the Syrian rebels to, sanctions in Iran. I mean, there's a million votes. You can imagine Senator Liz Cheney voting on the side of the White House on foreign policy.
Yeah, what she's trying to do, and she might have some success at doing it. There's been some preliminary grassroots support for her. I mean, the Cheney family name has some resonance in the grassroots. Yes. It's not all negative. Some of it is, you can't think of a bigger middle finger pointing in the direction of the Democratic Party. So if that is animating you when you wake up in the morning, then you say, why not, Dick Cheney?
Well, this segment didn't help at all. I should keep all this to myself. Matt Welch from Reason Magazine, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If you've managed to overcome your depression after what the Supreme Court did to the Voting Rights Act, congratulations. And if not, there is some hope to report on tonight. I'll explain ahead.